Hello. Allow me to set up my usual little setup. Namely, I gotta tilt this over this way and boop. Yay. So hi. As you might expect, this is going to be a fairly chilled out stream, although I think I'm probably going to be able to converse just fine with people and stuff. My voice is doing a little better than it was, so there's that. I thought I was feeling less feverish, and then I first lost the thermometer I was using, found it in this pocket of this robe, and then tried it again, and it still said I was running 102. I don't feel as much like it's still 102, so there's that anyway. And more relevantly, I want to make this screen go away. See, more relevantly, Airwindows work is never done in that I have a delivery coming today. So I've kind of got to be available to answer the door and sign for a package, which is going to be part of something that I'd like to do a little more of. Namely, and I'm sure you'll forgive me for being a little bit sketchy and slow because I'm still sick. But I mean, it's either like lie in bed or lie here, you know. And there's no reason I can't try to answer questions if I don't understand them because I'm sick. I'll just be like, I don't understand. And that'll be fine. So there's no reason I can't spend like an hour and 40 minutes here with you guys. I've got a thingy of water. I've got my magic potion, being emergency with a little bit of orange juice. I actually drank a cup of coffee this morning, which will help me not get that style of headache, because getting sick kind of got in the way of that, and as a result, I was pretty hurting the other day. But yeah, the thing I was talking about as far as the package delivery that I've got, that I need to be available to get, you know, certainly today or tomorrow, but I see no reason why it couldn't be today, is another Blue Lantern modular thing. And one of the things about these is that I don't see people making YouTube videos of that stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, these are awesome little modules that are extremely affordable and have a real nice sound all their own. They have a lot of vibe to them. Oh, here, let me put on my, in case I need to read anything up close, because people are used to see me with that. I was too sick to even put on my glasses. If I need to look at anything here, that will help. So, Gam is asking a question. Let me see whether I'm down for answering it. Very quiet body and some spikes. The closest I've got to something like that that will act like leveling without really taking away spikes in a clippy, limity way is Surge and Surge Tide. I don't remember which of them will be better for that, but those have a very slow reaction time. Oh, Heresy would like a gain control for Holt. Seems legit. I didn't remember that that didn't have a gain control. But yeah, it strikes me that a lot of these Euro modules, like the Blue Lantern ones, do not have YouTube representation. Like, you can search for them and nobody's making videos on these things, and I think they deserve to be covered by somebody who's able to do it in fairly decent quality. So probably what I'm going to do is take that camera and this mic and this basic setup and run it pretty much just like this, just the same thing as the Tuesday music jams. And again, I think I can safely do a music jam tomorrow as well, because the way this rig is currently working, I've been building its ability to like improvise music without my input. The idea is that I should be able to jam along with it, and that can be challenging, especially if I have it chasing the chasing something, clearly. God, what was I even saying? I'm running a fever, my brain's shorting out. Don't mind me. Point being, I think the world needs some more video examples on YouTube of these very affordable Blue Lantern things, because increasingly it's easier and easier to get into Eurorack hardware stuff, and it is also a platform where you can get little perf board, like pegboard, the epoxy stuff with the little holes in it, and put parts in there, build stuff, and run wires to the power supply that the Eurorack cases allow. And you don't have to start with an expensive case. In fact, Behringer has gotten into making cases. They have ripped off something from, I believe, Tip Top Audio. And Tip Top Audio, of course, is the people who were like, you cannot have stackable cables. We own the concept of the stackable cable. So people have varying feelings about that. But Behringer getting into that means that, well, it might be somewhat sketchy as far as being really built like a tank. It ain't going to be Moog quality. But it's going to be super cheap. And if you're just getting into something like that, there are really many things that can be done as far as control, sequencing, generating sounds, especially if you kind of like these funky circuit bending kind of crazy noises and stuff. Eurorack is very applicable to that because you can build your own circuits that way. Now, let me have a look at the chat while we've got it going, because there are several things. So Holt wants a gain control, noted. Oh, Mute Tourette's is as ill as me. Well, we'll hang up being very low-key today. Like I said, there is no special reason I can't sit here comfortably rather than lying in bed comfortably. Once I'm finished with this, I can go and sit in that chair, which is even slouchy. There's a chair over here. And I think it's possible that I can answer some questions, even in the, don't put too much stock in what I say today, because I'm apparently a little bit feverish and weird, and I can't guarantee that I'll be talking perfect sense, but maybe that'll be even more interesting. I've got a pen and a little bitty note card, so if I get some ideas, which will sometimes happen when you're ill and your brain is not healthy, if I get any great ideas, maybe that's something that I can work on in other weeks and other times. So Kip Casey is, I believe, responding from KVR, where he has been talking about how monitoring doesn't have a crossfeed. And again, I don't know what to tell you because I showed the code and it's literally doing a all pass and a crossfeed. The thing about that is that if it's really like an all pass, you don't get frequency response dips because that's the whole point of it being an all pass. An all pass changes the phase and blurs that stuff out, but does not introduce like dips and notches and things, or what you'll get out of a comb filter, which is a different thing. But I will certainly continue to talk about that if you would like. Your Tourette's like the video of the Lyra. Cool. I should do more things like that too. One of the things I got to do is learn how to interleave, like so many things that I do. Interleave stuff like that with the plugins. And I'm sure I'll get more into that when I'm not actually doing so many plugins, because now that I've got character going and I've also got another plan happening, there are still a bunch of plugins that need to be made. So what's my most standout plugin? I don't know. I think one of the things that I enjoyed the most was discovering Console, because it was like, you know, a bolt from the blue. It's one of those things where if you get like all funky and spiritual and stuff, and you're like, my magical muse, like in the ancient Greeks, delivers me ideas sometimes, and I'll know if that's working when the ideas come and they're super easy and chill and not a lot of work. And sometimes when I work really hard on things, it doesn't go as well. So Console, the original Console, which was based off of Density, and not even, that was before I had the accurate anti-sign thing that current versions of Console use. But Console came in a way where I thought it out and I just kind of like, well, why not? Let's give this a try. And it was practically like one line of code for both of the sides of it. And I gave it a shot and it frickin' worked. It worked super well. And I'm like, aha, I'm onto something. But it was so small and tiny that it was like I didn't even labor over it. It's like it was there waiting to be discovered. Those are the ones that I like. I don't need to do incredibly hard ones that I struggled valiantly, or like I'm so smart and stuff. I want to discover the ones that are like ping, where it's not even necessarily coming from me, it's just this was waiting to happen. And I was fortunate enough to stumble across this. I feel similarly about floating point dithering, because when I figured out that the mantissa of a floating point number is just a subject to dithering, but you know, with some caveats, the floating point dithering accurately dithers the mantissa, and seemingly nobody has thought to do this before, even though it is clearly a little chunk of fixed point at a known loudness. So that's also one that I was happy about, although it has led to many arguments and complicated, a whole bunch of ridiculous hoo-ha as far as people not being able to relate to the concept. Honestly, I owe the guy from Isotope a lot of credit, because he got it and he started throwing reprogrammings and stuff, and then there were two of us doing the thing, and we were both very clearly like, yeah, this is not the most important thing in the world. But he got it and he was doing code, you know, he was fixing bugs that I already had. And then I went another level and I was like, I have found the accurate for these numbers and I've also recoded the thing. I ended up with a version where there was literally none of his code in it, which I felt important because he wasn't putting licensing things because he thought it was too small of a piece of code. And I needed to be able to MIT license it with some confidence that nobody at like Isotope could come around and be like, actually, you need to stop doing all of your stuff because we own this. So the floating point dithering is another one like that. another one that I appreciate. So let's see. I'm trying to read all this kind of at a distance. The text is not very large. Maybe what I can do is switch you guys over here, and I will do my level best to make sense of this all. So, do I know of any software alternatives to the, software alternatives such as VCV rack to the chord organ which can adopt my chord firmware? No, I don't, because versions of the chord organ in software, if they even exist, are not emulators. That said, it's possible to do, but I am not yet doing it. And there was somebody who was going to get into porting Airwindows stuff to VCV rack. They're free to do so. It's MIT licensed. That said, I haven't heard anything from them. I wanted to know whether they could do it as MIT licensed so that I could get the stuff and use it in turn, and I just stopped hearing from the person at that point, so there's a challenge. But, so I don't have anything in software that can do the chord organ stuff that I'm doing. That said, I'm still developing ways of making it work as what it is, and that's another reason why I'll fire it up tomorrow, whether I'm feeling sick or not, and just kind of let it play and, twiddle with the knobs for a while or go and take a nap while it's playing. And it's kind of like when people do multi-Moog Mother 32 things where, this is generative music, and it's playing typically random notes, but varying them enough where it's that's a kind of ambient space music. That's nice. And then they'll do it for 20 minutes and it'll keep sort of changing just enough to be basically interesting. I'm looking to take that farther. Cat, excuse me. So, no, not yet. Not yet. It doesn't exist in software yet. Brian is talking about Reason, and in order to host Airwindows plugins, a host has to be able to supply a generic interface that doesn't exist in the plugin. The plugin tells it different, like in VST, plugin tells it the number of controls and takes a value of 0 to 1. In the code, I've got stuff in the VST code that's capable of displaying it as 0 to 3, such as in Neverland. The second and third things are 0 to 3. But that requires that the host has to call those routines in order to display what the routine is drawing in the interface. And they exist. But if the host isn't calling the routines, then it's not capable of displaying the correct output. And bear in mind that you may be thinking of VST GUI. Most plugins aren't as generic as mine, and most plugins show a VST UI. Mine do not have them. Mine have only params in the wrapper matrix. So there's that. And I don't know whether Reason is particularly problematic as far as this is concerned. There are many plugins with many different hosts with many different issues. For instance, The same thing I'm using to do this videoing is OBS. OBS will load my plugins. OBS will run my plugins. OBS will not show any controls. It'll run them set to default. So I can set up stuff to run in OBS by just presetting it, making it an interfaceless plugin. And that stuff will work just fine. I can get all of my sound quality out of it. There's no problem there. But OBS will not display the generic interface. So these are some of the problems. Mute Tourette says, thanks for keeping going with the dither. Well, I'm doing my best with that dither thread. That dither thread is a bit of a problem, and there is the tendency to have it go really harsh and nasty. And I think I've outlined why, but I can't do anything about it. If there is somebody who needs to insist you can't hear any of the things that you claim you can hear, you can't hear that stuff ever, you're making it up, you are fake, then somebody is going to be saying that regardless, and you'll never be able to out-argue them. I've been hearing these arguments for 20 years, at least. Hi, Cosmic. I don't have a fresh ginger root in the house, but I do have ginger stuff. Usually I make breakfast using oatmeal that's sweetened with stevia and also has a bunch of ginger powder in it. I also got some ground up sort of oat flour and oat bran, and that was meant to sort of fill in, because when I make oatmeal using real oats, it gets kind of watery. You know, it's not going to become like your packet stuff. So I was trying to bring it a little bit closer to there. And then I got some sort of a fairly large amount of ground ginger, which is quite strong, and I mixed it in with that, and then it ended up being kind of nasty. It's a little more yucky than the powdered stuff. But I still have that, so I may end up throwing more of that in my oatmeal before I can get some more of the kind that I like, which is probably going to be this Thursday. Yes, I consume ginger on a regular basis. I build it into my food. Back in the day, which tape machines do I have fondest memory of? Well, that's the thing, is I've always been kind of a basement studio kind of guy, so I didn't get, I'm just young enough that I didn't get to use big multi-track tape machines. I never had anything particularly good as far as reel-to-reel, although I did have a TAC 3340 at one point, which was kind of neat. It was only 4 tracks. I did some stuff with it because I owned it, and I would say that wasn't all that impressive, but it was real interesting as far as getting it, because I was doing sort of dubby stuff where I had really heavy bass, so I got some experience in just how exaggerated bass could be on a not especially high EEPS tape deck, because it will depend on that. Open step principles, don't know what you mean. Try that again. I would not be a bit surprised if Adrian Ballou made amazing software of the self-generating kind. I would not be a bit surprised. Part of the challenge of this is that you increasingly get people, and this is also the case in things like Eurorack, which I enjoy, but you get people doing amazing stuff and you'll never hear about them because they're just not mainstream enough. That's one of the reasons I want to put out some coverage of some of these things that I've identified as being good. And I'll also be making my own stuff, one of the things I'd really like to do is be able to sell people parts at cost in such a way that they could get into making some of these things more cheaply. Because I've made lots of Music Thing modular stuff, and I feel like those kits are awesome. But you can also just get the circuit boards, and if you just only get the circuit boards and faceplates, that is way cheaper. And the reason is Tom Whitwell from Music Thing Modular does a very thorough job of assembling the kits in such a way that it's super easy to figure out what you're doing. Like, there's different kinds of resistors in little baggies with labels on them saying, this is 6 of this resistor, and 2 of this resistor, and 1 of that resistor. And I've never seen him fail. It seems reliable as far as what that stuff is. But that's going to cost you. And when you buy the full kit, it costs more than buying the circuit boards and then the raw parts, because there are indeed many parts in there. And if it's a thing of like you need 20 100K resistors to build this kit, I just have to wonder whether it's possible to do things like, can I get like respectable, like Zycon or something, 100K resistors of the kind that one would use. I'd like to get them loose because I would like to sell them by the ounce or by the 10th of the ounce or something like that. Just get a little scale, and rather than counting them, just sort of shuffle them out and then figure out how much, that is, and be like, okay, $3.12 gets you 1 ounce of 100K resistors. There you go. And that would set you up to have all of the resistors for making as many of these kits as you'd want. And if I'm setting up to do that, I can buy this stuff in bulk. I got a Patreon, so I can get things in more bulk than my patrons necessarily can, and I can pass that on. So you can pay the resistors by the 10,000 or 100,000 cost, and there's always price breaks with that. But I can resell them at the exaggerated cost, or I can resell them at the cost of the 10,000s, but I can sell them by the ounce. So it'll be just roughly this number of these. That's something I'm going to be trying to do. So, have I tried porting some plugins to the Reason rack extension format? If I was to do another format other than the ones that we've got, it's going to be VCV rack. Reason's private format is not going to be the first thing that I reach for. There's also a Linux format that seems like if we're going to be supporting Linux, I'm doing the Linux VSTs, but there's also a dedicated Linux format. And I think that would be higher than just the private Reason format. Kip says, you checked stereo bass with some bandpass, you won't hear any changes. Dude, the thing about it is, with monitoring cans, you're not supposed to hear big radical changes. It's meant to be subtle. I'm not really sure what you're wanting to have happen, but I think you need to get something else. I think you need to get something else that isn't monitoring for that. I don't know how I can help you. Plus, why are you doing stereo bass? Console channel, the first going to the bus. Yeah, console channel is on the end of the channels. Bus is on the beginning of the bus. There shouldn't be anything between them. And you should be padding before you hit console channel, so the faders should be at unity, rather than padding the output of console channel to do stuff. So we mentioned that Reaper handles plugin parameters differently. Yeah, Reaper has some bugs. I don't remember the exact ways. I do know that they've had problems with stuff that specifies audio unit indexed things where they seem to overlay their own count for the count that you furnish using the plugin. Like your plugin will say like, okay, these are options 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and Reaper will be like, okay, here's my control, and it gives 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's like, no, that's not what I told you to do. That's not what it says in the code, but that's what they do. And I don't know what to do about that other than sort of just keep on keeping on. Slices of ginger root boiled up in hot water could make you feel better and boost your immune system. Probably not wrong. I like that stuff. When I have it, I will do that. Maybe I'll get ginger on Tuesday. I'm probably going to be going to the grocery store on Tuesday. Ooh. Elheim says, one guy made a tracker module for VCV. Ooh. I like the sound of that. That sounds cool. You know, one of the reasons I got sick was I found a thing to do, which was a very delightful thing to do, but I guess it had a cost. In my hometown, there are some guys who are, oh God, no, AO is much better than VST in various ways. There are some guys doing a synthesizer get-together in Bellows Falls, in my hometown. I didn't make it last month, but they're doing a second Saturday of the month Synth Jam. And I went not knowing what to expect, and man, it was deeply impressive. The local radio station, like the local radio station, Wool FM, tries to get people to do shows and broadcasting to Bellows Falls mostly. And these guys are doing a Friday show. They're called Infinite Is. And I didn't know what to expect. And the music seemed kind of like, well, this is dead on really early Tangerine Dream. And that seems to be what they like. And the radio broadcast is drowning in reverb, including when they're talking. So that's interesting. And I didn't know what to expect. When I went, I was like, these people are all really nice. Wow, I like all of these people. I like the music they're making. There was guys that had come from 2 hours away. Guys that had come from the Massachusetts area. And the guy that was running the radio show for this particular thing, this synth thing, let me sit in on his rig. You know, I helped them out by like giving batteries to a kid who needed batteries for his setup. And like I live in town, so I was like, I'll just scoot home and get whatever you need, which is super handy. I can see it, I'm going to be their best friend. But the thing about it is the guy let me play on one of his synthesizers while he had everything going. He was jumping around writing levels on things because he was also running the PA. It was a surprisingly good PA. The thing, though, is it was stupidly cold that night. And I went out into Bellows Falls to this place and just nuked myself with how cold it was. And that was not of the good. So it was kind of my fault. I feel like it was worth it, though. Cosmic discovered a funny little echo in Pop. Pop doesn't have any echoes in it, so it's probably a room. One of the things about pop is that it will highlight transients in such a way that it'll exaggerate them and make them more obvious if you're getting echoes in the room. And Ahmed is saying, hey everyone, hey Chris, are you doing better now? Well, in a moment, give me a second. I gotta put this over here, and I'm gonna blow my nose. That's kind of nasty. That's a paper towel. That's all I got. I don't have all that much as far as self-care stuff that's going on, but I will make do. Yeah, I think that it will... pop can make something sound like there's an echo because it'll exaggerate transients. And if your room has an echo, you'll hear it more easily because it's exaggerating the kind of thing that you could pick out as an echo. Yeah, I'm using Reaper for all of my stuff lately, although I probably should get back into Logic. As annoying as it is, it do have enough drive space in the Mac Mini that I could let it install its, shall I say, bullshit 20 kabillion Apple loops that are basically garbage. I can let it install those things and just call it cost of doing business. Because one of the things I'm going to have to do is get into the doing mixes in the box rather than just calibrating my ears all the time with the analog mixes, which I like. I care about that a lot. But I'm also going to have to multi-track capture this stuff down and then get back into a scenario that's more like what people are used to seeing from me, which is the picture of the DAW interface and then just the camera as a little tiny square somewhere. Oh man. Ahmed, I didn't figure out the Blue Cat's plugin script either. I gotta confess, I did not figure it out. I support GIM in Blue Cat lots. I don't feel that plugin script was that approachable, and I wasn't able to figure it out myself. So I had to give it up. I was very excited to support it and be doing stuff in it at one point. And I was going to work with that guy and it was going to be amazing. And then I just stumbled. I wasn't able to figure his stuff out. Yeah, well, you're talking about Bo leaving already. People could probably demand that I leave and go nap. Like I said, there's no special reason why I can't just chill here. And I can probably even answer questions to some extent, although I don't guarantee sensible answers. Reaper has had a bug where it associated pop-up lists with the results incorrectly. It was a bug I could not fix because fixing it would mean breaking it for all the other DAWs. So it applies to pop-up menus, probably does not apply to VSTs by the nature of how VSTs work, but it applies to pop-up menus and audio units. Like VSTs don't even let you have pop-up menus, so there's that. C++? Do you mean C++? Technically, the Airwindows stuff is C++, but it's really a lot more just like C. It's really not like using features of C++. For some pretty good reasons. C++ has lots of features for abstracting bizarre concepts around programming and how things are assembled, and it tends to make things more bloated and less reliable, so that's not anything that I like. Well, you know, I've made a plugin template available. That's on my GitHub. It's on the base level of the GitHub, yeah. So what I'm using is literally up there. I'm not sure how up to date it is. I think I might have not kept it up to date as much as I might like, but it does exist and it is there. And I can help you as far as getting it working, because when things get really complicated in that way, that's when I start failing. So I need to get my stuff so that it works and then just keep it the same way and not do anything with it. I tend to live in fear that the compile thing is going to randomly fail at some point and then I'll have to figure it out. Oh, the concept behind Nicola is that I went to a con where there were people playing music through a musical Tesla coil, and I thought it was amazing sounding. And so I tried to do something which did not end up being that much like a real Tesla coil music thing. But I made a really obnoxious plugin, and the idea is it's kind of trying to track the waveform and trigger these little zaps of obnoxious on every waveform cycle. So that's kind of how that works. I've actually got it in my list of stuff that I'm going to put out. Depends upon how tough it is as to whether it'll be anytime soon. But I am going to try doing it. It's not successfully really accurately like a Tesla coil, but it's a horrible, nasty... It's always fun for me when I have these horrible nastygram plugins, because there are certain people who just can't handle it. They're like, why would you even do that? And I'm like, because... Oh, yeah. Mute Tourette's was enjoying the Peter Brook album. Yeah, man. That guy was a guy that I went to school with. That was back when I was using drugs. And we saw some really wild times, me and Pete Mladeneo. And I stopped using drugs. He didn't stop using drugs, and he died of it some years back. I did not know, but I was able to record his album when he was functional and able to do stuff. And I'll always be grateful I was able to do that. I think he really had talent. And the stuff that a lot of those songs speak to his experience as a drug addict. And they are completely sincere. It's a pity. I wish it was somewhat less sincere, because I don't have him anymore, but yeah, good album. I can talk about audio cutting sometimes, Ahmed. It's just like, it's one of those difficult things where there is no, this is audio coding. Like, if you're starting to do it and you're able to make the plugin, and then you're like, okay, I did samples and I put out samples and this compiled. And now, if I tell all the samples to be 0, it's silence. So I'm effectively changing the samples. And if I tell all the samples to be ×2, it's a gain boost. And so I know how to change the samples. Where do I go from here? That's the stuff I can talk about. But some of my attitudes regarding audio coding are unusual, let's just say. And yeah, my Hello World of Audio Coding is the templates that I've got up on the GitHub page. The bottom line of that is that I have made those templates available. I don't know how useful they are, and I'm not able to talk people through getting them working, but they're what I use. Could I make a DIY hardware version of the Tesla coil? I shouldn't. It would not end well. You know, if you want that, there's a Eurorack module for it. Synth has one. Synth is also a company that I like, although I don't like their kits as much, because their kits, they're kind of discontinuing them, but their kits are not nearly as approachable as the Music Thing stuff. And they make a Tesla coil styly thing, which is like the plasma force distortion thingy or whatever, and it is badass. I've sometimes wanted to do one of those in my Sox boxes, because it would be the most beastly lead sound that you could possibly have. I haven't. It's an expensive damn plugin. I mean, it's an expensive damn module, but it exists. You can get a plasma tube Eurorack module, and it also existed as a guitar stomp box, but it failed really hardcore because nobody likes that sound on a guitar. It's only useful if you're really just trying to obliterate the sound, and that's more likely to be a thing in synthesizers. It is extremely ugly and obnoxious guitar distortion that nobody would like, other than maybe Trent Reznor, and I'm sure he already has one, but beyond that, you're kind of out of luck. Thanking me for 2 tape 6. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's been around for some time, and I do my best to keep them up to date. And the combination of 2 tape and 2 tape 6 and just plain tape are pretty good options for that style of thing. Oh, Third Man Records have just released the Guitar Stomp version of that plasma. I think the Guitar Stomp version existed first. I'm not positive, but I think the Guitar Stomp version existed before the Eurorack version. It just failed. It wasn't successful because typically guitar players looking for a distortion aren't looking for that, which I think is pretty understandable. And that's the bottom of the chat for the moment, so by all means keep talking or asking me stuff. Otherwise I'll just sit here, because I'm sick and I don't have as much of an ability to chat away like mad today. I can hang here with you, and it's possible that I'll even, well, about halfway through anyway. Possible I'll go and rest, but it would actually be not dissimilar to what I'm doing right now. It's not like I'm doing heavy lifting right now, so there's no special reason I can't hang out with you. You can't catch disease through the camera, thankfully. Yeah, bear in mind, Nicola is not going to sound like the plasma thingy. It's not going to sound anything like it, but maybe you can combine it with stuff and make it so that it does. Chance of a louder too. I don't know. I hadn't really thought of digging into louder again. Louder is another weird concept where it's like trying to simulate the compressibility of air in a particular way. And I've always wanted to be able to reproduce the stuff that you get when you're recording impossibly loud things over a great distance. Bobcats had me write code for him way back in like 2007 or so, because he had a set of recordings of a space shuttle takeoff two mics, or four mics, two of them in Omni or cardioid and two of them in figure 8, and he wanted to do a surround thing. But he was recording to two different digital recorders, and understandably they did not stay in sync for crap, because that's often the way. Like, I'm finding I can't get my live streams to stay in sync for crap half the time. The Wednesday hangout thing is often like that. And so I've kept on doing so. I can't get a camera on there because it'll just be wildly out of sync. And the audio, even going through an HDMI, will end up being completely off. So Bob had that problem. And so I did a plugin that, actually no, it was a program. It wasn't even a plugin. It was back in the days before plugins, when I was doing mastering tools. And it was basically doing a azimuth correct, but in stereo on two separate sets of things. And that worked fairly well, but it also meant I had a recording of the space shuttle takeoff that I got to fool with. And Bob, being a mastering engineer and stuff, had recorded it super well. It wasn't clipped or anything. But that was an example of like, okay, this is rumble, and it's 10 miles away and super loud, and it's basically just white noise or pink noise, and the sound is piling up in weird ways, making these funny crackles because of the behavior of air. I've thought that if I could figure out why air did that and what it was like, I would be able to really nail some realistic audio in plugins, specifically making stuff sound more far away convincingly, because I care about that a lot. And I have not yet done it, but that's what louder, what the hell was it? Louder. That's what louder was about. Was, in that case, I was taking recordings of truck pulls. I was taking recordings of like German mega truck pulling competitions, and it's these things where they're pulling this giant sled with a humongous weight on it that slides forwards and crunches into the ground, and the truck pulling it has these enormous tires and all that kind of stuff, and like 5 nitromethane dragster engines on it. So that's the neat thing about it, is like, this is as loud as they get. 5 dragster engines with no mufflers at once. So what I did was I grabbed audio off of YouTube videos of this stuff, which is not of the best, but it was the best I could do at the time, and ran a program to measure where the samples would go from any given position. And I kind of found that there was a distinction between whether the samples could go louder at a certain position or whether they could go quieter. There was not linear. There was something going on there, and I may not have gotten it exactly right, but that's what louder is the boiling of that research down to an algorithm that tried to do it. And let me see what this talk is about. Somebody wants movable bell, low mids and mids. Yeah, biquad 1/2 might be your the correct one there. I mean, if you're talking about low mids and mids, it's going to be biquad 1/2 that is the correct one there. Ahmed is looking for a plug-in amp. Yeah, ain't quite there yet. It's not impossible. It just has to fit in with the other stuff that I do. Yeah, funny thing about Guitar Conditioner is that it is not exactly a emulation of the Tube Screamer. It's really not, but it is boiling down some of the things the Tube Screamer does in such a way that it's applying them with very little damage. That's why that works. With guitars especially, it matters a lot as to the detail and resolution on the thing, because if you're distorting, you're bringing up that background noise, and you're bringing up the quantization and stuff, so you have to be extra careful with it. I'll see whether I can do something along those lines. It's not happening next week, I'll tell you that. Which plugins can act like mastering glue or be a realism adder? Yeah, I guess you're hooked in all sorts of psychoacoustic sweetening. I shouldn't talk. I stuck the Hughes SRS box into my reverb feed for two reasons. One of which is it seemed to do a cool thing with the reverb, which I did appreciate. So I was like, okay, I'm down with this. And secondly, it has stereo balanced outputs, and my mixer wants to get balanced inputs, and the MIDI verbs aren't even slightly like that. The MIDI verbs are extremely weak and single-ended. So if I patch those into the sound module, the Crate SRS, then it converts them over to balanced output, which can then feed the mixing board. That said, I did end up having to hack with it extensively. I replaced all of the electrolytic caps inside it with like caps that were much larger. I didn't feel as if I was getting enough low bass out of it, so I just fixed it. Yeah, apart from Kemper, everything else is hopeless for a high gain metal amp. That's legit. I don't know, there was somebody who did stuff that I liked fairly well, but all things considered, I don't actually go for high gain sounds, so it's difficult for me to make a lot of sense as far as that's concerned. I tend to go for, you know, like classic rock style-y sounds. I can get a bunch of different ones like that, but I appreciate high gain metal sounds, but don't tend to do much with them. Interestingly enough, on the Ardor Discourse blog, Paul Zadisred is the latest and favorable mention of coding. Linus Torvalds apparently is flaming C++. Regards with coding for dummies. Yup, rightly so. Rightly so. He is absolutely right in that, you know, C++ is a chainsaw and it will chop your arms off. And I don't tend to really do that. So, you know, Ahmed, one possible thing is I also have spent lots of time building, in fact, we've seen some of these things on my Instagram, building hardware, building stuff with chips and transistors and capacitors and things. And there are things that you can do which will get you into a high gain metal sound simply because you want to distort a lot, and you're really kind of better off doing that in the analog domain. So I would almost advocate for like getting stomp boxes that will do what the amp is supposed to do, and that'll get you closer probably than the plugins. And then you can use the plugin zone for like your cab simulations or whatever. But the gain part of it, you kind of want to be going into the computer with a already gainified sound. At least that's the way I feel about it. To make your plugins, are you using any libraries or are you using the VST SDK directly? I am using the VST SDK directly. I am not using any libraries. I'm not actually using the VST GUI, although my brother Dan might be able to help me get into that zone. That'll be a whole different thing, and probably will lead to times when I'm doing stuff that you know, the instant I put out something like that, people will demand everything has to be VST GUI at that point. Which is funny because it's like, no, that's not how that works. There's more than 180 plugins. You're out of your mind if you think that I can turn all that over. But the VST SDK, by that I mean 2.4, does actually have capacity for doing GUI stuff. And that's why so many VSTs have like primitive GUIs of some kind or other. It's because that's fairly normal for that to exist. So much so that some DAWs expect it. They think that the only way you can have a VST is if it has done this. Yeah, well, Ahmed, regarding mine not being an emulation of a Tube Screamer, I'm trying to do a abstraction of a Tube Screamer. That is so often the way that I work, is I'm trying to find what things must be done as cleanly as possible to get some of these effects happening. And so I will do that, and if it's doing some of those like key points that make you think Tube Screamer, but it's also as cleanly as possible so more tone gets through, you're going to tend to think that it is more accurately like a Tube Screamer, whereas somebody is modeling all the little details of a Tube Screamer much more accurately, but they're losing tone, then that's going to sound kind of less like one. That's part of the thing. Charlie Hayden is enjoying Golem. Good, I'm glad. Well, now there's an interesting point. I have not done that. It automatically sums. So there is that, and I don't have it working to align stereo material. Honestly, I feel like that would be along the lines of a mastering style plugin. But, you know, I'm glad you're liking it. And that is a fair criticism, that it would be nice to be able to do that in stereo. Yeah. As far Neverland is very primitive. It's very primitive. It's from 2007. It exists so that people can open their old mixes, and also because people were like, man, the old character stuff was much better than your newer things that you started to do, i.e. bus colors. People were like, bus colors is not as good as character. And then by now people have completely forgotten about that. But now it can be tried. Like, if you think that the old character versions were better than bus colors, then compare Neverland to the lush setting on bus colors and see whether the one sounds differently, because bus colors does the sort of dynamic convolution thing that they do with a envelope, and character does not use an envelope. Instead, the math that it does to apply to different things does it on every sample independently of any other sample. And I decided that annoyed me because it basically meant I was doing a lot of math to be equivalent to a simple convolution. So it felt like the math was unnecessary. And though I had that thing going on, all of the samples were going to be exactly the same math or no math. So there was like, and that meant that it wasn't really dynamic convolution. Instead, it was just a composite of like a loud and a quiet convolution that was being generated on the fly, but was never actually any different. So that's the thing. It's like I moved away from that, and then these ones that I'm bringing are, starting with Neverland, are the old one that I would call buggy, in which it's actually just doing the same thing as a single convolution. But if people like it better, then that's cool. So we shall see. Yeah, Stephen, the thing about hardness as part of Neverland is it is the new channel that I did, and it also exists in Crystal, and it was not successful with people. And then sometimes it was very successful with people. All hardness is at 0 hardness, you got density, just like a lot of other plugins and stuff. So you're doing that. At full hardness, you have no density or any saturation algorithm at all. If you clip, it's hard digital clipping. And then settings between are settings where it is perfectly flat, no distortion at all, up to the point where the density algorithm kicks in, and then there's a discontinuity there. When it starts to apply it very gently, but it's still something that this is a problem with audio, where people can hear and dislike discontinuities and stuff. So you can use the hardness control as 0 to have a sort of fat, saturated sound, or you can use the hardness control at 1 for a clean, convolution impulse type of sound. But the settings between, maybe not going to work. Maybe not going to be the ideal. It depends. A lot of people talking about just tweaking and just playing around, because that's what you got to do. Oh, I never fired up my little question text. I wonder what it even says. I think it says nothing. I'm going to go and put something in. Don't mind me. Yeah. So 12:08, an hour and 10 minutes in, and I have used the question text thing. Obviously, I'm not going to be updating that today. It'd be far too hard. Ahmed has a question about using console. No, you can't substitute bus colors instead of console bus. It does the opposite. For some versions of console, you can fairly well substitute bus colors for the channel plugin because it distorts. It doesn't do it all that accurately. There is no really right answer. You can't substitute it for console bus. It does the opposite of the thing. You could throw it after console bus, though. Ombre is fun because Ombre is me trying to figure out some of the stuff Terry Manning did on ZZ Top Records. And he and Billy Gibbons will not talk about what they did. They are doing that sort of, what's the name of that guy? Blue Note or something. Jazz guy. They are doing that thing where you do exactly what we've been talking about. You experiment and you tweak and you try weird things, but then you don't tell anybody about it. I would prefer to tell people about it. But Ombre was me trying to figure out whether maybe some of the stuff they did was acoustic area things. Like, here's an example. This is a little calculator. It is an acoustic reflector. I got a microphone here and my voice there. And if I put it there, it will reflect sound that is higher than the frequency given by its square footage area, much like a PZM. And it will reflect that in such a way that the sound will bounce off of it, and all of a sudden you have a faint echo that is band limited. If you had a soft material on it, you would have a faint echo that was darkened. If it was very hard, you might have a faint echo that is band limited by the square footage of how big it is. And that is a tiny, like a slapback, but even faster. It's like a bit of a flange, honestly, in the acoustic domain entirely. And I have no way of knowing whether this is something that Terry did. If he did, he didn't tell me. But I thought I heard stuff where the ZZ Top stuff that was very primitive, and there's also another reason why it might be something like that, which is Terry worked with Led Zeppelin. And Jimmy Page did a thing where he was trying to do everything with multiple microphones and just kind of combining them rather than throwing a bunch of EQ and stuff. He was trying to make everything out of full bandwidth microphones and just combine them to do interference and comb filtering and stuff. He was using all that on purpose. When you do that, it's like something that Bob Katz did with a K-stereo processor. If you've got an echo that is just enough delayed that it gets hidden by the initial transient of the sound, you wind up getting all the detail doubled, but not in such a way that it sounds explicitly like an echo. I think that might have been what ZZ Top was doing in some of their stuff. I could be completely wrong because there's no telling. There's no way that they're going to tell me. So, Ombre is nothing more nor less than a couple of delay taps. One of them is in phase and one of them is out of phase. And they're calibrated. Yeah, excuse me. Rudy Van Gelder, yes, that's exactly it. Further console talk. If you use like Purist Console, that is close to mathematically perfect, so you can use that on your bus and then put anything that you want around it. Like you do your tone coloring thing with bus colors or whatever on the bus after Purist Console bus. Guys, I don't know if I'm going to make it to the end of this. I'm sure it's going to be fine. Like if I needed to go lie down, nobody is going to... Oh, David, yeah, I'm feeling like absolute crap. I got real sick. I'm still running 102 fever. I have no idea what Amit just said. I feel like I just had a stroke. Ooh. That's being sarcastic, by the way. for fur 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 away future. Yeah, this I'm not going to be able to make any sense of that. I need to ask some of the guys that were involved with that whether those all the song books that have come out. There's a particular couple of people who are doing that and seem to tap into so much information, arguably too much information. I don't trust that they necessarily are correct. But the whole idea is they will tell you exactly what was being used on every one of the tracks of like Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, Pink Floyd. I've got the Led Zeppelin, and that helped me do some of my evergreen stuff. And now I have the Pink Floyd. I don't know whether it's really accurate, though. They could be just writing stuff because they can sell it. So, I don't know. I don't know. The information seems basically legit, though. Hard to say. They're expensive-ass books. They're brutally expensive-ass books. I guess that means that I will definitely be getting into a Pink Floyd Evergreens at some point, simply because I had to spend this fucking money on this book. And they're ridiculous. Yeah, channel does not replace console in any sense. Yeah, the last console is a special trick. I have not yet made it relevant. Console 5, I believe, is the one where it's the sine and arcsine behavior. So the more recent console was the one that a guy was like, here's something that it perfectly cancels out. Can you use this? And I was like, I can give it a try. But it's going to distort too easily. So that's going to find its way into something like, you know, a console modeling type thing that maybe does some gain staging inside it so that it can handle levels of a certain amount. It's definitely, the most recent console is not the cleanest of them. The most recent console is more like an experiment. Ahmed, have you tried Digital Black? I'm almost certain I've got that. Perhaps not. I have a gate that is called Digital Black. You should try it. It is a hard gate. That seems to be the way things often work out. I do feel as if fairly often people will request things of me and I've already done them, but they lost it because in among 1,000 billion plugins, you can't keep track of it all. Yeah, that's me. You're right, though. I mean, you're not wrong. I'm definitely, like, my energy is flagging a little bit here, which is hardly surprising. I do still need to be around and about for receiving the very cheap Blue Lantern kick drum thingy, because that will give me the opportunity to do decent quality videos highlighting some of this stuff. And they do not exist on YouTube, and I'm convinced that the guy from Blue Lantern is just nailing it in a bunch of ways. He has similar attitudes to me in many ways. One of the things that he's done is tried to come up with different power supply things so he doesn't have to run the ribbon cable from the Eurorack stuff, because he feels that the ribbon cable is not big enough wire to give a proper tone. And he's got a point, but honestly, I think the fact that he's aware of that is indicative. All of the stuff that he does, that I've tried, seems to have a lot of energy, a lot of mojo. It really stands out. There's a sonority to it. And I've done many shimmeries. I've got a kick drum, which is a weird little thing. I'm looking into the name of the gate plugin is Digital Black. I think that is one of the ones I've done. Vincent, why am I wearing a bathrobe? I've always done that for the Monday stream because it's very casual. And I spend a lot of time at it. And also it's really cold up here in Vermont. Not that much now because I'm running the furnace so that I can not hurt myself further. In fact, there was the first time, I think, on the Sunday post that I was wearing it for the plugin post. Normally I dress up and gussy myself up a little bit, production values and such, because those are the ones people really care about. But Monday is just catching up with me in an extremely casual way, and Tuesday I'm probably wearing like street clothes and stuff, but Tuesday I'm just doing a jam. And I'm also trying to bring in the ability to talk to the chat and read the chat while doing the Tuesday jam. But hard to say whether that's working or not. Oh, 5 was terrible. 5 was terrifying because Console 5 came out and the elaborate stuff I was doing with regard to the slew was generating DC issues. And that was a big challenge. Oh, good God. Ahmed, are you sure? I guess I can check too. I should check. Give me a second. Little Command N. If I go to new updates, you were right. How did that get by me? Well, I can see how it got by me, all this other work that I did. There is no digital black in there. Well, that's going to be fixed. Thank you. Let me write that down. That's a gate. I'm pretty sure I do have gate-elope. You could probably use that as a gate. Thank you. I did not realize that one got by me. That did get by me. That's not part of the collection. Soon it shall be. Well, soon. At some point it shall be. You should not use every of my plugin even if you don't need to. Use only the ones you need to. Aiden, probably not. I've used real tape machines too. Plugins can't necessarily get you all the way there. I do the best I can. There's a certain softening quality about there. I'm not actually modeling anything regarding interactions with a bias tone, which might have something to do with it, because that's likely to just give you garbage and intermodulation distortion and stuff, and I leave stuff like that out if it's going to hurt more than it's going to help. I don't think you can do actual like tape magic in the high end in software. It just ain't possible. Best you can do is make stuff sound nice and smooth in the way that you get. I mean, analog can sound really good. Don't underestimate how good analog can sound. I'd like to bring people more of the capacity to do more analog stuff. No, you'd like me to incorporate Baxandall into bus colors? I'm probably going to end up doing stuff regarding making new console versions or variations that do incorporate some stuff like that, but it'll be on a case-by-case basis. And Tourette's, if it was Digital Black 2, I'd still see it in the list. Clearly it is not. No, man, I like analog. I don't think it's possible to do in digital is well suited to capturing stuff with a great deal of, you got to be really anal about it. You got to really be picky and don't ruin anything. And it is a pretty darn good way of capturing stuff that exists in the sound world and being able to play it back exactly right. It's not terribly hard for it to do that. The problem comes when you're trying to do things that normally happen in the analog world and failing. Eventide simulations, nope, don't have any of those. Often I avoid name brand stuff, even if it was the kind of thing that I do, which it essentially is not. I tend to avoid name brand stuff. Yeah, Digital Black exists, but it exists in the old plugin section. Well, one of the things I would like to do, Aiden, is also make it possible for tinkerers and solderers and people hacking stuff together to start avoiding analog. I'm going to work on that. As I see it, there are I can get CMOS chips that you can use for some of these things. It's notably synthesizer building and sequencing and stuff, for 20 cents a pop, and resell them at 20 cents a pop. To do that would involve me spending $200 on 1,000 of them. It's possible, but I need to plan and figure out what I'm doing. But this is a thing where I'd like to see people being able to build stuff and do more analog stuff, because that's always been what I cared about more. Honestly, the character and bus color stuff are more like mic pre plugins than anything else. That's kind of where the impulse responses came from. There was somebody who had a series of impulse responses, like Neve mic pre's, SSL mic pre, API mic pre, at all different volume levels, and so those things all came out of building a composite what's the thing? Building a composite impulse response out of a soft and a loud impulse response. So those are already kind of mic pre plugins in a sense. Yeah, character was like a collection something. I don't think it was ever a catch-all, all-in-one thing. I think it was a package of just everything combined together. But they would still be individual plugs. Yeah, those are the ones, and then character was the collection of all of those, and they were the early versions that did not do what Bus Colors does, as far as trying to accumulate dynamic behavior more than a sample-by-sample basis. You know, I think that might be a Precision 8 pre, because one of the character plugins is like Precision or something like that, and I'm pretty sure that changed into Hollow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, bus colors just clip itself. Aiden, I had a FMR really nice compressor once. I didn't keep it. So I don't still have it, but I had one once. Yeah, I've ended up using higher quality pre than that, but there's like a long time ago I was able to get into owning an API pre. It was the 4-in-1 API 3124. That's what I'm using here. And that is better than the FMR because it's kind of hard to get better than the API. That, Neve, not necessarily SSL. SSL pre's are not that great. SSL mixing is what people normally like about that. But as far as mic pre's are concerned, there are just a few right answers. And Neve and API count as right answers. Although API is transistor, it's not like the right answers have to be tube. But there's sort of a Ferrari pre. It's kind of delicate that you can have the op amps inside it, which are not op amps like you know them. They're op amps in like large circuitry conglomerates that are about yay big, and they can blow up on you. So I had one that 2 channels ended up dying on me because I did something wrong with it and broke it. And TAC 3440, woot. I had one of those once. Oh, believe me, I'm guzzling lots of vitamin C. I have not stopped all the last couple of days. It's good because if I make that stuff, which is basically emergency, which is vitamin C, with some orange juice, it's kind of concentrated orange juice, as long as that holds out. For whatever reason, I just have an infinite hunger for guzzling that stuff in ways that just drinking water doesn't seem nearly as exciting. So that's a way of me getting fluids in, and I'll be doing that. $16K bump in some of the limiter plugins. You see, these are the things that I lose sleep over and freak out about, because the algorithms are tending to be pretty weird, and I do have to figure those, but if I knew how to fix them, I would have done. I have a version of Compressaturator coming out that is Compressaturator 2, which has a wet-dry, where you get to also go to the sort of delta subtract, hear only what the Compressaturator is doing. And it's unusually useful for that one. It is a huge benefit, but I can't get it to work reliably. I started using the VSD version of it and started running into weird, ugly problems, and I can't put it out under those conditions. So like everything that I've done with it is useless until I figure out what's gone wrong. It's probably the same kind of thing as that. Pausing and replaying probably does the thing of not initializing the audio properly. And some of these things are like low frequency overhang or some form of interleaved algorithm misbehaving. You know, a lot of these things were experiments. A lot of these things were like wild and crazy experiments, and I do my best with them. But there will be some, like when I'm putting together a package of mix kit or whatever that people can get, it will be leaving that stuff out, because that stuff will have failed to reach the threshold of being a really useful and flawless plugin because there are problems with them. So I'm going to be coming out with collections, and I'll be releasing them like they were actual plugins, but it'll be more like, okay, this is the hand-picked selection for this stuff, and I'll be picking only stuff that's reliable. There's 180 plugins, and and more. And among those, some of them just didn't work out as well as I would have liked. So I'll be selecting the ones that did. Hey. So Infinity asks, can someone with good knowledge of physics create a summer in VST better than analog? I don't know. I'm liable to try. That's kind of exactly what I'd like to do. I have not yet done it. If I was to do that, it would be, rather than emulating analog mixing boards and things, it would be emulating the way that air combines sounds. And that is something that I've worked on for many years without ever having quite got there. But that's the idea. I'd like to get there eventually. I'd like to do the thing where I've made a digital bus plug-in pair that does better than a simple analog board. It'd be very clean sounding, I'll tell you that. Because if you have, it'll be one of those ones where if there's only one sound going through it, nothing happens. And Ahmed, thank you. 2 minutes before I have successfully gotten to the end of this stream as promised. Woot. Thank you guys for not being impatient with me as I slowly talk to stuff. Yes, I'm not really up for much, but it seems as if I was able to answer questions a lot anyways. And that's what I would like. And if it wasn't that, I would just have to go lie down somewhere anyhow. It's not like this is much harder work than that. So as long as you're down with me being sick and not thinking too clearly, there's no special reason I can't. Again, this is not heavy lifting. If it was, I'd be really unhappy because I'm feeling very crappy. And, you know, I started out the day by trying to make breakfast, and I couldn't even do that. I make breakfast of like omelet and oatmeal and stuff, and I flopped the omelet out onto the table rather than keeping it in the pan because I was not down with being able to coordinate my hands. Mid-side focus, I don't know. So yeah, like I can barely walk, I can barely, I basically scooped the omelet back up and put it back into the pan and finished it because I was like, you're not going to stop me having breakfast. But yep, it's one of them things where with a bit of luck, I will recover. I had thought that I was recovering a little more. I took my temperature and it was still frickin' 102. I don't know whether the thermometer is busted, although I looked that up. I was like, can mercury thermometers break? And the answer is nope. No, they cannot break. They are completely reliable. And I'm like, oh great, I'm boned. But I'm feeling a little better than I did last night, and I'm sure that will kind of continue. And tomorrow, again, I can fire up my modular thingy, much like with the chord organ video, and basically just let it play, and it'll do pretty interesting and amusing stuff. So that can be very relaxing too. And there's no special reason I can't do that. And then Wednesday, Shauna, who is one of my Wednesday Minecraft players, called me up and was like, yeah, if you're still feeling down on Wednesday, I'm just trying to catch up. I didn't get the machine, but just trying to catch up, and if you're feeling down, it's okay, you can skip. And I'm like, well, that is true, but one of the things, anyone ask if you've got coronavirus, I have not been to China. In fact, I don't really see many places outside of my house, so I would imagine that was extremely unlikely. And, you know, even if I did, the chances of getting killed by the thing are also extremely unlikely. But the idea of me having coronavirus, I think, is super duper unlikely. Like, where would I have run into somebody who was exposed to that? I don't go out, so. Anywho, it is 12:39. That means I can Oop. Chris is sick today. Yes, I am. So, we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.